Mirae is a lonely office worker who's completely given up on romance after getting dumped by her boyfriend. However, everything changes when she signs up for a virtual dating program only to be matched with a digital boyfriend who looks exactly like her most annoying coworker. Now stuck between pixels and reality, she finds herself falling for the guy she can't stand. The story begins with Mirae, a webtoon producer whose love life has been on airplane mode for so long because she prefers self-care to her actual job. At work, Mirae runs into her annoying and aloof coworker, Kyungnam, and for some reason, the entire office treats him like a celebrity the moment he walks in. But Mirae can't understand what all the hype is about him. After work, Mirae meets with her best friend Jiyeon, who forces her to pick a dress for their classmate's wedding. However, Mirae doesn't want to attend because her ex-boyfriend Sejun and his current girlfriend might also be there. But Jiyeon insists that dressing up is the best way to show she has moved on. Later, Jiyeon tries to convince her to give up her celibate lifestyle, but Mirae quickly lists 1,000 reasons why having a boyfriend would ruin her peaceful cat lady life. When Jiyeon suggests she date a quiet, aloof guy, Mirae's mind briefly drifts to Kyungnam before she immediately shuts the idea down. The following day at work, Mirae's mood drops when she learns she might be assigned to work with an extremely fussy writer named Yunsong. The last time they worked together nearly drained Mirae's soul, so she rushes to her boss, Byung-hak, to protest, but Kyungnam has already beaten her there. Still, Mirae tries to escape the project, but her boss gives the job to her anyway, and since Mirae absolutely hates cheesy romance stories, the assignment feels like pure torture. To make matters worse, she remembers that working with Yunsong years ago was so exhausting that she even missed Sejun's birthday, which caused a serious rift in their relationship. On the day of her classmate's wedding, Mirae shows up wearing a plain dress instead of the one Jiyeon picked because she refuses to play Barbie for anyone. At first, she's relieved that she doesn't run into her ex, but after the ceremony, she notices Sejun's girlfriend happily showing off her engagement ring, which leaves Mirae feeling bitter. Back home, Mirae can't help but think about when she and Sejun once talked about getting married, and just as she steps out to clear her head, Yunsong sends her a message, making her terrible day worse. Later on, Mirae begins reviewing Yunsong's webtoon to prepare herself, but the overly cheesy dialogue makes her cringe, and the poor reviews don't help either. The following day, after completing the project handover with Kyungnam, whom she now blames for pushing her straight into this mess, Mirae's coworkers try to cheer her up with lunch, but Yunsong suddenly appears and drags her back to work. Soon after, Jun Young from a dating simulation company arrives to propose a collaboration based on Yunsong's webtoon character, Siwoo. Mirae nearly gags when she hears the name of the game is Boyfriend on Demand, since she's completely allergic to anything remotely romantic. Still, Jun Young hands her a free 1-month subscription and asks her to write a review of the experience. That night, Mirae sets up the equipment and puts on the headset only to immediately pass out. When she opens her eyes again, she finds herself on a beautiful beach, but before she can process what's happening, a massive wave drags her into the ocean. Soon after, she fishes out a ridiculously handsome man from the ocean. And while staring at his chiseled body, Mirae slowly realizes that he's Siwoo, the main character from Yunsong's webtoon. Before entering the dating simulation, Mirae is pulled into the tutorial section, where she meets Uni, her cheerful digital dating assistant. Uni immediately hands her a small ring and explains that it's her emergency exit. After that, she summons a pod and pushes Mirae into it, where she ends up saving Siwoo. When Siwoo wakes up, however, he suddenly grabs her wrist, startling Mirae, so she yanks off the ring and logs out of the simulation. The next day at work, Mirae tries to focus, but her mind keeps drifting back to the game. Meanwhile, Kyungnam learns that Byung-hak wants to release another writer's webtoon on the same day as Yunsong's upcoming episode. Kyungnam dislikes the idea, but he has no choice but to comply, and Byung-hak even warns him not to tell Mirae about it. Later that evening, Mirae heads home, but everywhere she turns, Siwoo's face seems to be staring back at her as if the universe is sending her a message, so she gives in and logs back into the dating simulation. This time, Mirae finds herself inside a luxurious hotel, which she quickly recognizes as the workplace of the female lead from Yunsong's webtoon. That's when it hits her that she's actually playing the heroine. Curious, Mirae wanders into Siwoo's office, but when he arrives, Siwoo harshly scolds her and orders her to leave. But suddenly, he stops her when he realizes she's the woman who saved him. As if pulled by the plot, Siwoo launches into a dramatic confession, but intense pickup lines are so painfully cheesy that Mirae quickly logs out. The following morning at work, Mirae learns about the double release plan and storms into Byung-hak's office to confront him. Suspecting that Kyung-nam had something to do with it, she decides she needs to put him in his place. So she calls Yun-song, but when the writer refuses to answer, Mirae tracks her down to a karaoke bar. When Mirae explains the situation, Yun-song shows zero interest in competing with another writer. But Mirae refuses to lose to Kyung-nam without a fight. After giving Yun-song a pep talk, she finally convinces her to return to the office so they can create an episode powerful enough to dominate the rankings. Unfortunately, after spending the entire night brainstorming ideas, they still come up empty. On the way home, Mirae suddenly gets an idea and rushes home to log into the game again. But the moment she meets Siwoo, he fires her on the spot because he doesn't plan on dating his subordinate. Mirae boldly tells him that if he actually wants to date her, he should at least put in some real effort. Her unexpected confidence impresses him, so Siwoo transfers her to become his personal secretary. Later, she meets up with Minju, Siwoo's chief secretary, who immediately begins questioning Mirae about her hobbies and preferences, but Mirae quickly realizes that Siwoo is behind it. Later on, she goes to Siwoo's office and, upon entering, she's greeted by an overwhelming sight of flowers, which Siwoo prepared just for her. Curious about what he'll do next, Mirae eagerly asks about his plans. Her excitement immediately crashes when he takes her out for lunch and serves her nothing but a tiny plate of raw fish. But suddenly, an entire line of chefs marches in carrying elaborate dishes, leaving Mirae overjoyed. After lunch, Siwoo takes her shopping before treating her to a full chaebol-style fantasy experience. The ridiculous luxury actually sparks an idea in Mirae's mind, so she immediately logs out and rushes to share it with Yun-song. Surprisingly, Yun-song loves the concept, and the two begin working tirelessly to finish the new episode. One night, while working late, Mirae runs into Kyung-nam, who tries to explain that the ratings competition wasn't his idea. Mirae refuses to believe him but ends the conversation quickly rather than argue. That night, Mirae nervously waits for Yun-song to send the final draft, and after publishing it, she rushes home to wait anxiously for the ratings. Luckily, the episode skyrockets to the #1 spot. The next morning, Mirae walks into the office like a champion and even gives Kyung-nam a smug look of victory. Later that night, Mirae logs back into the simulation, where Siwoo treats her to a private jet ride followed by a romantic dinner on a luxury cruise. During the date, Siwoo suddenly asks her to marry him, but Mirae bluntly refuses. They later arrive on a private island, where Siwoo finally asks her to be his girlfriend, and gently kisses her before presenting her with a ring. But just as the moment becomes truly romantic, everything around them suddenly freezes. Mirae watches in horror as the system announces that players cannot date the same character for more than 50 hours. Frustrated, she logs out and checks the manual, only to confirm that the rule is real. For the next few days, Mirae sulks around, suffering from the withdrawal of her fantasy romance. Still, she manages to give Junyoung a review of the game. Sensing her attachment to Siwoo, Junyoung casually reminds her that the simulation includes over 800 other male characters. At first, Mirae resists the idea, but with nothing exciting happening in her real life, she eventually decides to give it a try. When she logs in again, Uni summons a new pod and pushes her inside, where she's transformed into a college student, and standing in front of her is Eunho, an adorable college boy. Before Mirae can figure out if Eunho is her next date, his classmate Yerin pulls him away. Just then, a girl who looks like Siwoo's secretary, Minju, arrives, and Mirae realizes she's just a different NPC with the same face. As they explore the school, Mirae is excited to be young again. Later, while watching a Kumdo match, Mirae spots Eunho again, and the system instantly informs her that he's her next date. Curious, she signs up for the Kumdo club, only to discover that the entire school has a crush on Eunho. Before she can even process that information, Mirae suddenly finds herself at the club's welcome gathering. As the event begins, Yerin, a senior, announces she'll invite one new member onto the stage. At that exact moment, Mirae absent-mindedly raises her hand to catch a falling petal, which Yerin takes as volunteering. Yerin calls Eunho up to demonstrate the basics with Mirae, but the moment Mirae picks up the sword, she surprisingly moves like a pro. Everyone is stunned, and even after losing, Eunho commends Mirae's skills, which leaves her flustered. After the gathering, Mirae runs into Siwoo's driver, Youngpil, who is also an NPC, and Minju is instantly smitten by him, proving that even background characters are better at romance than Mirae. Later, Mirae asks Eunho out for lunch, but to her shock, he turns her down. Slightly offended, Mirae immediately goes to complain to Uni. But Uni reminds her that the game has over 800 virtual boyfriends, each with their own personalities. After her virtual escapade, Mirae returns to the real world exhausted, and Kyungnam, thinking she's exhausted from work, tries to keep a coworker from disturbing her. Later, Mirae learns from her boss that Yunsong is taking a short break, so she calls Ji-yeon over to celebrate that night. As they chat about their younger days, Mirae wishes she could be 20 again when being confident and spontaneous felt easy. But Ji-yeon quickly reminds her that she used to be exactly like that and mentions that she boldly chased after her ex-boyfriend Sejun even though he had a crush on another girl at the time. After briefly considering Ji-yeon's words, Mirae decides to be brave again, so she logs back into the game and shamelessly begins chasing after Eunho. Unfortunately, Eunho continues to ignore her attempts completely until one day he suddenly challenges her to a kumdo match. Despite telling her not to go easy on him, Eunho is defeated in the blink of an eye. When Yerin arrives and sees him out of breath, she realizes he suffered a flawless defeat. Meanwhile, Mirae feels a little guilty, realizing she may have completely crushed his pride. At a welcome party, Yerin purposely gets too close to Eunho to make Mirae jealous. She even makes a snide comment, and Eunho fuels it, so Mirae bluntly asks him why he dislikes her. Realizing he went too far, Eunho apologizes, after which Mirae suddenly walks over to declare her interest in him. But Eunho quietly plays hard to get again, leaving her frustrated. After the party, Mirae asks Eunho about his relationship with Yerin, but when he refuses to answer, she decides to get to know him better. Suddenly, it begins to rain, so Mirae pulls her jacket over Eunho until they find a shelter. While discussing how to dry their wet clothes, a laundromat appears, so they head inside to dry up. While waiting, Mirae boldly expresses her desire to spend more time with Eunho, but his response reminds her of Sejun, instantly ruining her mood. To cheer her up, Eunho moves closer, and just as Mirae is expecting a kiss, he simply compliments her hair before assuring her that there's nothing between him and Yerin. The next day at work, Mirae is plagued with thoughts of Eunho and her ex-boyfriend. While stalking Sejun on social media, she remembers how he never wanted to post her picture while they were dating. But now he's doing just that for his new girlfriend, so she immediately blocked him. Still unable to contain her jealousy, Mirae goes into her fantasy world to escape reality. And as if she made the right call, Eunho invites her out for lunch and begins to pay her more attention. As their relationship grows closer, Mirae gets totally hooked on the virtual world. And one day, Eunho finally suggests they become more than friends. After a company dinner one day, Mirae prepares to rush home for her daily dose of fantasy, but she runs into Kyungnam. To show him that she has a life outside work, Mirae mentions that she has a date. Upon returning home, Sejun's fiancé sends their wedding invite to the class group, ruining Mirae's day. Suddenly, she receives a call from Sejun apologizing on behalf of his clueless fiancé. As if her day isn't already ruined enough, she receives a notification that her free subscription to the fantasy simulation ends in a few hours. So she logs in for one last chance at escaping reality, but memories of how Sejun broke up with her refuse to let her enjoy herself. Eunho soon notices she looks unhappy and sits next to her to comfort her. As she rests on his shoulders, Mirae begins to remember all the sweet memories she had with Sejun, which she had forgotten and replaced with the bad ones. After remembering the good times, she decides to let go of her hatred for him. After she wakes up, Eunho takes her to a clearing for stargazing. When she asks him if he likes her, Eunho simply smiles, but Mirae figures that his silence is also an agreement. Mirae then asks if he'll forget her one day, but Eunho replies that he won't. He explains that he'll remember every side of her, not just the bad. Moved by his answer, Mirae decides to let her ex-boyfriend go, and pretending as if he's in front of her, she wishes him a good life. Suddenly, the atmosphere between her and Eunho turns romantic, and Eunho prepares to kiss Mirae. But as they're about to kiss, Mirae's free subscription ends, screwing her over again. A month later, Mirae has returned to her usual boring life, and she's paired with Kyungnam for a project which she's not happy about. During a work dinner, her co-workers try to set her up with a blind date, but Kyungnam lets everyone know that Mirae is already dating someone. Later, he apologizes for being nosy, and Mirae simply brushes it off, even though she's unhappy about it. The following day, Mirae heads to the mall only to run into Ju Young doing a pop-up store for the dating simulator. He tries to invite her in, but Mirae manages to turn him down. Afterwards, Jian calls to remind her about their weekend dinner with a friend and informs her they invited a +1 for her. Mirae surprises Jian when she doesn't get angry about it and even commends her. Later, Mirae actually arrives at the dinner dressed beautifully and she has a good time with the guy they invited. However, on the way home, he gets too pushy because he doesn't want to waste time on casual relationships. This upsets Mirae and she instantly rejects him before storming off. Later, Mirae drowns her sorrows in alcohol, and while heading home, she hallucinates about Eunho. So the moment she gets home, Mirae searches up subscription plans for the dating simulator. Unfortunately, they cost an arm and a leg, but after weighing the pros and cons, she agrees that it costs even more to date in real life, so she finally pays for the basic plan. After logging in, Mirae finds herself in a beautiful house, and Uni explains that it's all part of her subscription. She even gets to keep everything Siwoo gave her as a gift and bring her dates to hang out in her virtual appointment. After the house tour, Mirae asks if she can finish her date with Eunho, but Uni refuses because that service is not available under the basic plan, but Mirae has no plans of paying such a ridiculous amount for the premium. So Uni reminds her that there's a ton of men to choose from. Knowing she doesn't have to be loyal to any one man, Mirae decides to forget Eunho, and when she steps into the pod for her next experience, Mirae ends up as a flight attendant. Everything is going smoothly until she flirts with a foreigner who turns out to be a hijacker. Moments later, her actual date shows up as a Secret Service agent, but Mirae is so scared to be in an action scenario that she immediately logs out to move on to the next one. But the next moment, she's startled when she finds herself as an emergency doctor. This convinces Mirae that the basic plan might have been the wrong decision. But suddenly it turns into a hospital romance with a hot doctor. After that, Mirae enjoys several different dating experiences, and soon she runs through them like she'd been starved of romance for too long. Mirae enjoys dating in the virtual world because there she can be anyone and even date Jay Park, whom she'd otherwise never meet in her lifetime. After a while of virtual dating, Mirae becomes a pro and even helps one of her coworkers salvage an already ruined blind date. That evening, she runs into Kyungnam, and it gets her competitive spirit back on track because it was the day they published their writer's episode. Later, Kyungnam heads home, but Mirae is unable to leave because of Yoonsong's habit of submitting late. Shortly after, she submits, and Mirae quickly publishes it without checking for errors. Unfortunately, when she checks it later, Mirae realizes there was a typo, and the complaints from fans have already started pouring in. After getting scolded by her boss, she messages Yoonsong and warns her to send in her episodes earlier for inspection. Yoonsong is horrified when she sees the typo and even more pissed after reading the comments, so she decides to sign up for the dating sim. That night, Mirae calls Jiyeon to hang out. But when she learns that she's out on a date, Mirae logs into the virtual world to get away from her sad life. But even that doesn't cheer her up, and she turns down a date because her 1-month subscription is almost up. However, the system still forces her into one that turns out to be Lee Eunho 10 years after college. It turns out this was a last-ditch effort by the game to make her renew her subscription. Even though she knows it's just a marketing ploy, Mirae is happy to see Eunho again. During dinner, she learns that Eunho opened an architecture firm with his friends, and when he asks why she dropped out of school, Mirae realizes that it was the backup story for her sudden disappearance. Mirae simply brushes it off and tells him that she's now a webtoon writer, and immediately her business card materializes to fit her story. After seeing Eunho off, she logs out only to receive a call from him in real life. This spooks Mirae, so she rushes to check the manual and realizes that the paid plan includes receiving calls and messages from virtual dates even after logging out. The following day, Mirae and Kyungnam disagree about a project, and Kyungnam makes an indirect jab at Yoonsong's work, which pisses Mirae off, straining their relationship even more. After the meeting, their co-workers ditch them, causing Mirae to sit through an awkward lunch with Kyungnam. After work, Mirae rushes home excitedly for her romantic movie date with Eunho, which makes her heart flutter wildly. And after the date, Eunho gives her a tour of his office, where he confesses that he couldn't forget her, so he makes Mirae promise not to disappear again. From then on, Mirae's virtual life begins to intertwine with the real world as she dates Eunho by night and receives messages from him during the daytime when she logs out. After dating for a while, Eunho even begins to hang out in her virtual apartment. Meanwhile, Jiyeon, who loves dating in the real world, gets her heart broken and makes up her mind to be like Mirae, who is allergic to romance. After consoling Ji-yeon, she heads home for another date with Eunho and asks him if he enjoys their time together. Eunho assures her that he enjoys every single thing about her, and this makes Mirae very happy. The following day, Mirae learns about an upcoming office workshop, but she doesn't want to attend. But after considering how Byung-hak treated her like roadside trash after she missed an office event once, Mirae decides it will be better to attend the workshop. Still, she hopes that since Kyung-nam never attends any office event, she can also skip it. But to everyone's surprise, Kyung-nam announces that he'll be there, which makes Mirae conclude that he's out to get her. On the day of the workshop, Mirae and Kyung-nam engage in a heated quiz competition, but Kyung-nam ends up winning. During a treasure hunt, Yoonju's phone slips into a stream, and everyone panics, but Kyung-nam calmly steps into the cold stream to pick it up, hitting everyone with a wave of his riz except for Mirae, of course. That night, everyone begins to see Kyung-nam in a new light, but Mirae struggles to see the hype about him until he gets drunk and starts acting cute. After sending him to sleep, Mirae is made to sing for the group, but Kyung-nam suddenly appears, leaving her embarrassed. Later on, she flees when she sees him and Eunju cozying up. Thinking they must be dating, she tries to stop her coworker, Dongmin, from riding in the same car with Kyung-nam and Eunju the next day. However, it doesn't work, and Mirae ends up having to ride with them, too. After dropping Dongmin and Eunju off, Mirae tries to get off, but Kyung-nam offers to drive her home, so she has no choice but to sit through the awkward ride. However, during the ride, she learns from Kyung-nam that an ad campaign belonging to Yoonsong has been given to his writer, Hwani. Mirae is unhappy about this and asks him to drop her by the roadside. But just before she gets off, Kyung-nam suddenly confesses his feelings for her, and before she can process the information, he drives off, leaving her confused. When she gets home, Mirae tries to wrap her head around the whole confession, but she remembers that he was also with Eunju, which convinces her that he's a two-timing scumbag. However, the next day, Eunju reveals that he actually turned her down, and she lay on his shoulder because she was tipsy. As soon as Kyung-nam enters the office, Mirae quickly avoids him, and for the rest of the day, she avoids him like the plague. Later, he tells her to stop avoiding him and just reject him straight up. So Mirae does and tells Kyung-nam that she's actually seeing someone, but a part of her is unhappy that he just accepted her rejection without making a fuss. Later, she tells Yoonho about Kyung-nam's confession, and he gets jealous that she always talks about him whenever they're together. But this excites Mirae that she's being chased by two guys. However, her excitement vanishes the following day when she stumbles upon an article about dating Yoonho in the virtual world. Mirae realizes that all the heart-fluttering moments with Eunho were just part of his programming. Moments later, she logs into the game, and Eunho gives her flowers, but Mirae isn't excited about it. Yoonho notices and asks about it, but Mirae can't seem to get her mind off the fact that he's just a program. Even when he tries to kiss her, Mirae avoids it and breaks up with him, explaining that she's no longer interested in the fantasy world. Mirae returns to her virtual apartment, determined to request a refund, though she hesitates at the thought of losing all her virtual belongings. Just then, Uni appears and tries to persuade her to go on other dates. However, Mirae quickly sees through Uni's attempt to keep her from canceling her subscription. Mirae asks how many other girls are currently dating Eunho, and Uni admits there are more than 12,000. This revelation instantly irritates Mirae, prompting Uni to propose upgrading her membership so she can customize her own perfect man. Mirae is hooked the moment she hears that the custom-tailored boyfriend, named Younggil, will belong only to her. Convinced, Mirae fills out an extensive questionnaire and even writes an essay after reading the raving reviews about the custom boyfriend service. Once the process is complete, she logs in to meet her perfect match, only to be completely shocked when he somehow ends up looking exactly like Kyung-nam. Startled, Mirae hurriedly logs off to complain to Uni, who checks the system but insists that there is nothing wrong with the program. Mirae demands that Younggil's face be changed, but Uni informs her that altering his appearance isn't possible. Frustrated, Mirae logs out again and tries to call customer service, but no one responds. The next day at work, Mirae finds it impossible to concentrate because Kyung-nam's face keeps distracting her. Still, she stubbornly refuses to accept that he could be her ideal type, no matter how many times she stares at him. Later, Mirae learns that Ji-yeon has finally recovered from her heartbreak and has returned to going on blind dates. Ji-yeon even asks Mirae to set her up with someone, but when Mirae checks her phone, she realizes that every man she knows is either married or happily living the baby mama lifestyle. Accepting that romance in the real world seems hopeless, Mirae logs back into the virtual one to continue her story with Young-gil. When he offers to give her a ride because she's a stranded tourist, Mirae suddenly remembers mentioning in her questionnaire that she wants to go on a trip with a hippie. As they drive off together, she can't help but feel that Young-gil was truly designed to suit her perfectly. Shortly after, they arrive at a bar where Jung-pil appears, playing a new character as Young-gil's friend. During their conversation, Young-gil asks Mirae why she's traveling alone and is stunned when she reveals that she recently broke up with her cheating boyfriend, who was dating more than 10,000 women. Later that evening, Young-gil takes her to her lodge, and Mirae unexpectedly runs into Minju, who is now playing the role of an annoying tourist. During dinner, Mirae learns that Young-gil is a traveler and an artist who paints for fun. This immediately reminds her that when she was young, her dream guy was a mixture of someone pure and a bit wild at the same time, like Santa Claus, but with chiseled abs. The following day at work, Mirae stares at Kyung-nam to see if he can make her heart beat fast, but when nothing happens, she concludes that Young-gil and Kyung-nam are two different people. Once she makes up her mind that Young-gil is different, Mirae finally enjoys her date with him without thinking about Kyung-nam. Later, she learns that Young-gil only paints couples because love changes at some point, so he wants to record it before it ends. On their way back to the lodge, they get lost in the woods, making Mirae afraid that the program might throw her into a horror scenario since she loves horror movies. However, that doesn't happen, and it soon turns into a romantic atmosphere where Mirae feels her heart beating wildly even in reality. The next day, Mirae Byung-hak scolds Mirae for not informing Yunsong about the lost ad campaign. He also informs her that she will be attending an awards ceremony with Kyung-nam because both their writers have been nominated for an award. After their meeting, Kyung-nam tells Mirae to stop avoiding him, even though she doesn't want to accept his confession. Later, Mirae calls Yunsong, who instantly blows hot when she learns she lost her ad campaign to Hwani, a junior writer. That night, Ji-yeon complains about her flopped dates, and Mirae suggests she take a break. Ji-yeon then asks Mirae about Kyung-nam because she has been talking about him a lot. But Mirae denies any romantic feelings or involvement with him and reveals to Ji-yeon that he actually asked her out. She shows her a picture of him, and Ji-yeon immediately concludes that Kyung-nam is not Mirae's type, and Mirae agrees with her. On the day of the award ceremony, Kyung-nam wishes Mirae luck and tells her to forget about his confession, assuring her that he'll be fine even though she decides to keep avoiding him. Later, Yunsong wins the popularity awards, but she's displeased when Hwani ends up winning the best award of the day. Later, Mirae practically begs her to attend the celebratory dinner hosted by the company, but Yunsong strongly refuses and pushes Mirae into Kyung-nam's arms. With no other options of escape, Yunsong heads inside to attend the dinner party, and everything goes well until Hwani receives a call from Yunsong's former producer, who has been avoiding her for so long. This makes Yunsong jealous, and as they start arguing, the situation escalates. Yunsong accuses Hwani of trying to get back at her because she rejected his advances. She then reveals that Hwani has been secretly sending her gifts, but Hwani lets her know they were for her assistant, Soyoung. Yunsong is utterly embarrassed and hurriedly leaves after claiming she has a boyfriend. However, no one believes her, but that night, Mirae picks up a call from Yunsong's so-called boyfriend when he calls to check up on her. After sending Yunsong home, Mirae heads back to the bar, but when she sees Yoonju flirting with Kyung-nam, she heads back out to drink alone. Afterwards, she receives a call from Young-gil, and when Kyung-nam appears in front of her, she mistakes him for Young-gil. It is then revealed that Kyung-nam fell in love with Mirae after coincidentally running into her a few times. Back then, he had dropped a keychain in the secret Christmas gifting box at the office, and Mirae unexpectedly picked it. Since then, he has been paying attention to her without knowing until it blossomed into full-blown feelings. He had made up his mind to forget about her, but after she grabbed his face, Kyung-nam felt tempted to hold on to her. Realizing the person in front of her is Kyung-nam, Mirae is startled. She tries to shoo him off, but he insists on walking her back because she's tipsy. On the walk back to their hotel, Kyung-nam asks about Mirae's relationship, and she assures him that it's going well. However, Kyung-nam doesn't believe her because earlier he had overheard her telling Yunsong that she doesn't have a boyfriend. After she took Yunsong home, he was worried about her, so when he discovered that she hadn't returned, he rushed out to find her tipsy by the roadside and mistaking him for someone else. When Kyung-nam remembers that Mirae lied that her relationship was going well, he concludes that she said it to make him give up. The following day, Yunsong drags Mirae back to the city because she's too embarrassed to face Hwani after the explosive revelation the night before. Meanwhile, Kyungnam is unhappy when he learns that Mirae left early in the morning without telling anyone. After returning home, Mirae receives a call from Yeongil inviting her over. When they meet, he tells her he's going on a trip and suggests Mirae accompany him. Mirae briefly considers how fun it would be to travel with Yeongil, but Kyungnam has crept into her heart. As she starts to confuse the two of them, Mirae hurriedly logs out. The following day, Mirae is displeased when Kyungnam avoids her. But later, she ends up avoiding him instead, and when she decides to face him without a care in the world, she ends up walking straight into glass like a bird. Embarrassed, Mirae scurries off and forgets her keychain, which Kyungnam picks up. As she nurses the huge bump on her forehead, Mirae is frustrated after embarrassing herself in front of Kyungnam. Later, Ji-yeon bursts into laughter after learning about it. When Mirae questions why she's not on a date, Ji-yeon explains that she's done with them because they're a waste of her time and resources. Despite that, Ji-yeon believes that there's nothing more fun than dating, even though it's hard to find a great guy. Later, she helps Mirae add bangs to her hair to hide the painfully obvious bump. And the next day, everyone compliments Mirae on her new hairstyle, but she's still embarrassed when she runs into Kyungnam. Meanwhile, Yunsong is still horrified after embarrassing herself the previous day. When her assistant Soyoung arrives, it worsens everything since she's the one Hwani has a crush on. As usual, she fails to meet up with her webtoon deadline and leaves Mirae waiting anxiously. When the heater at work goes off, Kyungnam offers Mirae a portable one, but she asks him to join her. While getting warmed up, Mirae strikes up a conversation with him to avoid the awkward silence between them. Shortly after, Mirae and Kyungnam quietly leave the office. As soon as she returns home, Mirae receives a postcard from Yeongil telling her that he likes her. And when she scans the code on the card, she sees a video message from him saying he misses her. The following day, Mirae is disappointed when Hwani's webtoon tops the rankings, pushing Yunsong's to number 2. Upon arriving at the office, her co-workers sympathize with her, but Mirae tries to play it cool. Later, Byung-hak also comforts her and asks how she plans to fix it. But when Mirae has no idea what to do, he scolds her for being clueless. After the scolding, Mirae calls Soyoung to ask about Yunsong, but learns that she's been unusually quiet despite falling from grace. The following day, she visits Yunsong to come up with a new strategy, but Yunsong has no interest in doing anything. However, after Mirae gives her a little pep talk promising to get the webtoon back to number 1, it awakens Yunsong's desire. Shortly after, they head to a restaurant only to run into Hwani and Kyungnam. To avoid the awkward situation, Mirae and Yunsong immediately turn to leave. But Hwani suddenly stops them the moment he sees his crush, Soyoung. Because of that, Mirae and Yunsong had no choice but to join them, but Yunsong refused to stay long. Hwani pleads with her and even offers to go on a hiatus as long as he can spend more time with his crush. But when Soyoung returns from the restroom, Yunsong suddenly changes her mind to stay. After their drinking spree, they head to Hwani's studio to continue, and Mirae can't help but be jealous when she sees Hwani flirting with Soyoung. But Yunsong interrupts them to talk about her own love life, and everyone is stunned when Mirae confirms that Yunsong truly has a boyfriend. Later, Mirae apologizes to Kyungnam for lying about having a boyfriend, and he apologizes for making her uncomfortable with his feelings. After confirming again that she doesn't have a boyfriend, Kyungnam asks Mirae if he can start pursuing her. Before Mirae can respond, Hwani calls them back inside. As Hwani and Yunsong start arguing about their work again, Kyungnam reveals that he usually submits his tasks early so the team doesn't have to stay late. Mirae is surprised to hear this because he's always in the office late with her. Yunsong immediately claims it's because Kyungnam is busy fixing Hwani's terrible drawings, but Seong disagrees and points to a painting on the wall as proof that Hwani can actually draw. That's when Hwani reveals that Kyungnam painted it as a hobby. Later, Mirae finds Kyungnam asleep and pauses to admire him like she just discovered a rare Pokemon. But he suddenly wakes up and immediately checks the bump on her head, which makes her heart flutter. The next day, she can't even stop thinking about Kyungnam and Yeongil, so she calls Ji-yeon to hang out, but Ji-yeon is too busy avoiding a blind date she previously ghosted. While hiding from her botched date, Ji-yeon somehow ends up discovering the dating simulation. The following day, Kyungnam begins his quest to pursue Mirae and follows her around like an annoying fly. Sometimes, he gives her coffee or compliments her looks, making Mirae lose her composure. Later, he returns the keychain to her and reveals to her that it was his secret Christmas present. That night, Mirae is frustrated thinking about all his advances, and she's startled when he suddenly sends her a goodnight text. Because of it, she's unable to sleep properly and heads to the office with a face cap to hide her haggard appearance. Everyone at work notices and chalks it up to working too hard. Later, when Mirae sees Kyungnam working hard to make Hwani's webtoon succeed, she can't help feeling a little jealous. And not long after, she takes that frustration out on Yunsong, scolding her for focusing more on dating than working hard like Hwani. Determined to take back first place, she tells Yunsong to focus, but that night, Kyungnam suddenly decides to take the subway with Mirae. However, Mirae bolts into a bus only to realize later that it's going to a different route. Meanwhile, Ji-yeon, unable to handle real-life dating, finally moves to virtual dating and instantly falls in love with it. As Christmas approaches, everyone at Mirae's office is too busy to decorate the Christmas tree. But that night, after working overtime, Mirae notices that the tree has been decorated and realizes that Kyungnam did it. He explains that he heard her complaining earlier, so he decided to work on it. He even gives her a cake, after which Mirae allows him to walk her to the subway. Shortly after, they stumble on an art exhibition poster, which Kyungnam asks Mirae to see with him. Seeing her hesitate to respond, Kyungnam tells her to take her time. Afterwards, Mirae asks why he stopped painting, and Kyungnam explains that he wanted to change to something more exciting. At the subway station, Kyungnam hands Mirae a letter, and when she returns home, she opens it to find a simple dinner invitation. She compares it with Youngil's card, and suddenly, they both text her at the same time. Frustrated by all the confusing attention, Mirae logs in to meet Youngil. Sensing she came to reject his confession, Youngil avoids talking to Mirae and offers to draw a picture of her. Meanwhile, all Mirae can think about is Kyungnam, so she apologizes to Youngil before informing him that she'll not be returning. She then reveals that meeting him keeps making her fall for someone else. When he asks if she actually likes this person, Mirae is unable to answer, leaving her frustrated that she asks Youngil if he knows what it means to like someone. Youngil explains that liking someone means remaining the same even if they change. This instantly triggers a memory of her ex-boyfriend, who broke up with her after claiming that he had changed. Saddened by the memory, she questions why Youngil is obsessed with keeping people from changing. However, she quickly realizes that Youngil was created to her taste, meaning she's the one who fears change. Youngil then asks if she can trust her new crush not to change, and this reminds Mirae that Kyungnam abandoned painting because he likes trying new things. Youngil assures her that he's the only one whose feelings will never change and begs her not to leave. The following, Mirae coldly tells Kyungnam to stop pursuing her. And during a meeting, they disagree on a project, and Mirae indirectly uses it to reject his feelings again. Because of her chat with Youngil, Mirae had realized the reason she was against dating anyone in the first place. And seeing how afraid she is that Kyungnam's feelings might change, she admitted to Youngil that she truly likes Kyungnam and not him. Mirae remembers how painful it felt when she broke up with her ex, and knowing her relationship with Kyungnam might end someday, she decided not to start it at all. Kyungnam is devastated by Mirae's rejection, and after several days of being avoided by her, he begins to crack under the pressure. A few days later, Byung-hak announces that he'll be leaving the company to start their foreign branch. After the dinner, Dongmin invites Mirae to share a ride, and upon entering, she finds Kyungnam inside. When she arrives at her stop, he offers her an umbrella, but Mirae refuses to accept. But he trails behind her and forces the umbrella into her hand. However, Mirae tries to return it, making Kyungnam frustrated. Overwhelmed by her feelings, Mirae pours out her heart, revealing that he has been stirring up her feelings. So Kyungnam questions why they can't date, and Mirae admits she's afraid of it coming to an end because he might change. But Kyungnam reassures her that people change all the time and points out that he changed a lot after falling in love with her. As the tension between them grows, Kyungnam and Mirae exchange a pint of romantic saliva. After the romantic moment, Kyungnam walks Mirae home and, before leaving, invites her to attend the art exhibition with him. The following day, when Mirae doesn't show up, Kyungnam decides to leave, but runs into her outside. After she apologizes for coming late, the two lovebirds head inside the exhibition hall, holding hands. After that day, Kyungnam and Mirae begin officially dating while keeping it hidden from their coworkers. Meanwhile, Ji-yeon has turned into an internet celebrity after writing several posts about her explosive dating experience on the dating simulation. Even Uni is exhausted with handling her and fears she might breeze through all 900 characters by the end of the month. But Jian doesn't mind and explains how much she loves the dopamine boost from being a virtual hoe, which has somehow gone viral. At work, Mirae panics when her coworkers almost discover that she's dating Kyungnam when her holiday plan syncs with his. But because of their dumb brain, they practically dismiss it. Mirae wants to be more careful moving on, but Kyungnam says he prefers they just tell everyone. So, during working hours, he sends her a message just to enjoy watching her lose her composure. After work, Mirae heads to Yunsong's studio to find out if she plans to renew her contract with the company, but Yunsong casually dismisses the topic. Determined to help her do better than Hwani's webtoon, Mirae struggles to come up with and asks Kyungnam for input. Afterwards, she asks him to draw a painting for her, like the one he gave Hwani. Kyungnam agrees, but when he suggests drawing a portrait of her, Mirae suddenly remembers that Youngil did the same thing. Later on, Yunsong gets frustrated after struggling to write a new episode, so she logs into the dating simulation to complain to her so-called boyfriend. After he comforts her and prepares a romantic dinner, Yunsong suddenly gets an idea for her next episode. While eating out the next day, Mirae's co-workers talk about the boyfriend-on-demand dating simulation. Mirae panics when Kyungnam questions the morals of those using it. After eating, Kyungnam tries to head back to the office with Mirae, but his co-workers drag him out to drink while Mirae returns to the office alone. However, Kyungnam soon returns tipsy after only taking a sip of booze. Mirae hurriedly hides him in the break room to prevent anyone from discovering her office romance. After updating Yunsong's newest episode, she sweetly wakes Kyungnam, and they head home together. Outside Mirae's apartment, the lovebirds exchange a sweet goodnight kiss before going their separate ways. Later that night, Yunsong's new episode tops the chart, and Mirae calls her excitedly to know how she came up with such a brilliant story. Yunsong claims she had a last-minute idea, but the truth is, she just used her experience with her virtual boyfriend. After the call, Kyungnam sends Mirae a congratulatory message, and she can't help but feel life is way too perfect. The following day, Hwani panics when he sees the rankings, but Kyungnam is too busy trying to sneak off to his date with Mirae to pay him any attention. Mirae, on the other hand, also ditches Jian to rush home. And moments later, Kyungnam arrives, and while trying to cook, Mirae distracts him for some premium fan service. The next day, Ji-yeon's explosive blog reaches Junyoung's table and learns that she's treating the dating simulation as a game and teaching people how to deal with difficult characters. Even the personas of stuck-up characters like Eunho crumble when faced with Ji-yeon's strategy and shamelessness. Ji-yeon is so good at the game that she even received a hidden reward that somehow created a loophole for dating two guys at once. Junyoung is shocked when he discovers she has finished over 200 virtual dates in less than 2 months. His assistant fears that she might start a fast-paced dating trend which might ruin their long-term subscription plan. Meanwhile, Mirae is busy living her best secret romance life when a plagiarism scandal suddenly erupts, accusing Yunsong of copying a character from a dating simulation game. Because of this, Ji-yeon also comes under fire for being a full-time virtual hoe. Mirae rushes to find Yunsong but learns that she has suddenly disappeared. Meanwhile, Hwani has a field day insulting Yunsong for lying about having a boyfriend. Fearing the scandal might affect his crush, Soyoung, he prepares to send a message blaming Yunsong for ruining her life. However, Kyungnam warns him not to send it, but he still does, only for Soyoung to roast him and even reveal she's also a user of the dating simulator. Afterwards, Mirae calls Kyungnam to fetch a file from her computer, but fearing he might discover the review she wrote about the dating simulation, Mirae bolts home like a wannabe Flash to stop him. Fortunately, Kyungnam didn't find anything, and when he asks why she rushed home, Mirae simply tells him that she was scared. Assuming it's because of the whole scandal, Kyungnam embraces Mirae to comfort her. However, after she falls asleep, he stumbles upon the postcard from Youngil and is confused when he sees the video. To get answers, he logs into her dating account, and his spirit almost flees when Youngil shows up. Early the next morning, Mirae wakes from a nightmare and notices Kyungnam is missing. When he finally returns, he looks exhausted but refuses to explain why. The truth is, after meeting Youngil and seeing a system pop up asking Mirae to renew her subscription, everything suddenly clicked for him. Just as Kyungnam is about to leave, Mirae receives a message from Youngil asking why she rushed off earlier. Realizing her secret is already exposed, she stops Kyungnam and explains that she only signed up for the program to help Junyoung with a review. After she apologizes for hiding it, Kyungnam quietly leaves to sort out his feelings. Later, Mirae logs in and tells Youngil everything that happened, before asking what he said to Kyungnam, but Youngil claims he said nothing. Later on, Soyoung calls to inform Mirae that Yoon-song is on her way to the company after Byung-hak suddenly terminated her contract. Meanwhile, Yoon-song soon arrives at the company to make trouble for Byung-hak until Mirae rushes in to send her away. Afterwards, Kyungnam helps her tend to a cut, but before they can talk about their own relationship problem, their co-workers interrupt them. But later, Mirae meets him privately, only for Kyungnam to revert to his former coldness. However, she decides to pretend nothing happened, and when she texts him later, Kyungnam refuses to reply to her message. She plans to send another, but remembers that Ji-yeon told her to practice self-control when it comes to men. However, Mirae throws that trash out the window and shamelessly sends another message. Meanwhile, Hwani notices that Kyungnam is unhappy and suspects he might be having relationship troubles with Mirae. Kyungnam is surprised because he never told Hwani about it. But Hwani reveals that he guessed it after learning about Kyungnam's unnecessary overtime hours. At the same time, Mirae is upset when she sees that Kyungnam hasn't replied to her text, so she tries to call him but stops when she remembers Ji-yeon's words. Mirae wonders if she should take Youngil up on his offer to help her fix things with Kyungnam. But Kyungnam soon gives her a single casual reply to all her messages. The following day, things remain awkward between Mirae and Kyungnam. Meanwhile, Yoon-song tries to sell off her dating simulation equipment but changes her mind at the last minute and later logs in to pour her frustration on her virtual boyfriend. After comforting her and whispering a few sweet nothings, Yoon-song quickly forgets about her real-life troubles. Back at the office, Mirae scolds Byung-hak for terminating Yoon-song's contract and orders him to simply send Yoon-song on a hiatus until the scandal dies down. And like a wet puppy, Byung-hak agrees without hesitation. Later, Kyungnam heads home thinking he was only in a meeting and sadly heads home thinking Mirae left without telling him. But she only went out to clear her head, and when she returns and doesn't see him, she leaves sadly, thinking the same thing. So she heads home to ask Youngil for help, and he takes her to a busy street where he appears in a suit. Youngil explains that her first strategy is to dress up in a way Kyungnam has never seen before. So the following day, Mirae arrives to work dolled up, drawing everyone's attention. However, her legs instantly turn to jelly when Kyungnam arrives in a suit for an interview. Though he appears unaffected, Kyungnam almost trips as he's mesmerized by Mirae. Next, Youngil makes her drop her heart at home and show up to work emotionless. But Kyungnam secretly finds her cute. Later, he goes to a meeting with Hwani, where Junyoung mentions Youngil and explains the custom-made boyfriend to them. On the ride back, Hwani gets curious about what Soyoung's perfect match looks like. When Kyungnam asks what he will do if it looks like him, Hwani tells him that he'll certainly be happy, but try his best to outmatch the virtual version. Hearing this, Kyungnam abandons Hwani by the roadside and rushes back to the office to see Mirae. When he finds her at a cafe, he immediately embraces her, making Mirae's cold heart flutter wildly, and with that, the lovebirds kiss and make up. Meanwhile, Junyoung sets up a meeting to get Ji-yeon to work with them on making their dating simulation better. But suspecting she might just be some dumb loser, he feels it might be a bad idea. However, when Ji-yeon struts into the room looking like $1 million, Junyoung is completely mesmerized. And after the meeting, he chases her out to exchange contacts and almost trips on Ji-yeon's riz. A few days later, during a company event, Mirae and Kyungnam meet up for a secret rendezvous. Unfortunately, Mirae shoves Kyungnam when Dongmin almost discovers them. Because of that, a shelf falls on Kyungnam, and he's rushed to the hospital. Afterwards, Mirae also rushes to the hospital to see him, and overwhelmed by grief, she mindlessly embraces Kyungnam in front of Dongmin, exposing their relationship. Later, Mirae apologizes for shoving him and also admits she went to seek Youngil's advice on how to fix their relationship. Kyungnam admits his feelings were messed up earlier because he was afraid that she liked Youngil before him. After talking things out, he tells her to stop thinking about their ending and simply enjoy the moment. This reminds Mirae that Youngil also said to focus on the love in front of her, so she decides to hold on to the present instead of worrying about when things will end. A few days later, they attend a farewell dinner for Byung-hak, and when he asks about Mirae and Kyungnam dating, they immediately confirm the rumor. However, no one believes them because they have been rivals for so long. Later, Yoon-song joins the celebration and settles her differences with Byung-hak. The following day, Mirae logs into the dating simulation to say goodbye to Yeonggil. He asks if she's okay with accepting that one day her feelings or Kyungnam's feelings might change. Mirae assures him that she's fine with it because change is inevitable. He offers her one last ride, but Mirae turns it down and finally says goodbye. After ending her subscription to the virtual dating world, Mirae heads out into the real world to finally give romance a chance. Thanks for watching till the end, and make sure to comment "I need a boyfriend" for part 2.